Hello, everyone. My name is Oren Yantan. I teach economics in Razukre Government Higher Secondary School, Kohima. In this session, I want to discuss about macroeconomics. As you know that we have two parts in our economics textbook. One is on macroeconomics and the other one is on Indian economic development. We want to discuss, or we want to start from the first chapter, that's the introduction part. It will be on macroeconomics. Now, when you look at the present scenario, because of this pandemic, we know that the world has been taken by surprise. It includes Nagaland, it includes India as well. You know, people have started talking about unemployment. People have started talking about recession. People have started talking about how many people are dying. People have started talking about increase in poverty. People have also started talking about how much there will be fall in, in population as well as in the national income as well. Now, when we look at present scenario, we are also experiencing the sudden rise in prices of almost all the essential commodities. So that's technically called inflation. And therefore, in this topic today, when we study the happenings of all these in general, in its totality as a whole, that will mean macroeconomics study. And therefore, for 1 mark, macroeconomics means that part of the economic theory which studies the economy in its totality or which studies the economy as a whole. And therefore, some such like examples are that I have already mentioned, unemployment. When we talk about unemployment, we do not only talk about a particular state. We do not only talk about a particular locality, but unemployment, we talk about it in general. Today, when you watch TV, when you read the newspaper, you will come across migrant workers displaced. You have seen the condition of these migrant workers. These are unemployment, and it's affecting the entire country as a whole. Today, you go to any market and ask for the prices of all the essential commodities. Normally, the prices where you pay maybe 10 rupees or 20 rupees has been, has risen sky high. So when we study the rise in price of all the essential commodities as a whole, or maybe when we study the population as a whole, when we study the national income, or in general aggregate demand or aggregate supply as a whole, those are the examples of macroeconomics. To understand this term better, we want to remember as to from which word this is derived. Macro, up till this part, macro is a Greek derivation. It is derived from Greek word called magro, M-A-K-R-O, which means large or long. And therefore, from that term itself, it clearly tells us that when we say macroeconomics, it means the study of the economy in its totality, or it means the study of the economy as a whole. So that's the meaning of macroeconomics. In your textbook, they have also given us the meaning of microeconomics, but we have already done this in class 11 in detail. So I just want us to recall the simple meaning of microeconomics. What then is microeconomics? Microeconomics, it simply means study of individual economic units, study of individual household, study of individual firm, or maybe study of an individual consumer, or maybe individual seller. So some such like examples of microeconomics will be, a particular household, a firm, or maybe what? Demand of a particular commodity or supply of a particular commodity. We should be able to differentiate between macro and micro. Macro means large, micro means small. Micro, for your information, is also a derivation of Greek word micro, M-I-K-R-O, which means small. So you should remember macro means large, micro means small. I hope the two terms is clear with you. Now, before we move on, I want all the listeners to make sure that you follow me with your textbook. Because unlike other subjects, economics, if you don't have a textbook, and if you don't follow me with this, I'm sure for some minutes you might be able to be with me, but you will go somewhere else. So you want to have your textbook as well. We want to discuss the basic problems of an economy. I am sure you remember the 3 basic economic problems we did in class 11. What are those? What are the 3 basic economic problems we did in class 11? Do you remember? Okay, so the first one is what to produce. Second one, for whom to produce. And third one, when to produce. So these are the 3 microeconomic problems. Likewise, the 3 economic problems we also have in macroeconomics as well. So now I want us to discuss the 3 basic macroeconomic problems. And those are, number 1, if you look at your textbook, it says economic growth. But the real meaning should be how to promote economic growth. That's number 1. Number 2, how to keep inflation under check. And number 3, how to keep unemployment under check. So these are the 3 main macroeconomic problems mentioned in your textbook, and I want to discuss this with you at the moment. Now, starting from the first point, how to keep economic growth, how to promote economic growth. Before we explain that, I want us to recall the meaning of economic growth. I am sure this is not a new word for us because we have come across this in class 11 as well. So what is economic growth? There are many people who can define this in their own, but we want to follow your textbook as well. So your textbook says economic growth simply means increase or rise in the per capita income or real income during a period of time. I'll repeat again. Economic growth simply means increase in per capita income or real income during a period of time. So that's the meaning of economic growth. And we can also understand economic growth as increase in the country's production over a period of time. So the reason why we say economic growth means increase in per capita income is because when there is increase in production, there will be increase in per capita income. So we can say economic growth is also means increase in country's production. Now, this country's production can be measured through GDP. I am sure you know what GDP is. It stands for Gross Domestic Product. So to measure country's economic production, we use GDP. And therefore, when we say economic growth, it will also mean increase in GDP. Meaning, the more the increase in GDP, the more is the economic growth. So how to promote economic growth? There are 3 sources mentioned in our textbook. When you go to higher classes, you will come across large number of factors that will push the economic growth farther. But in your textbook, they have identified the best and the most important 3. So the first factor or the first source that is expected to push economic growth further is, as it is mentioned in your textbook, growth of labor force. Growth of labor force is one source which will enhance or which will increase economic growth. Okay, what then is labor force? Is this a new term for you? Have you come across this in class 11? I am sure you have. So let's all try to recall what is labor force. Those people who are able, physically fit and fine, and comes in the age group between 15 and 60 years, will constitute labor force of a country. I'm talking about India, okay? So in India, those able-bodied person, physically fit and fine, and comes in the age group between 15 and 60 years, constitutes the labor force. So your textbook says this is one source which will increase the economy level in the country. So this growth of labor force, many people misunderstand this as the increase in number, that is quantitative. But when we talk about growth of labor force, this increase in labor force, the quantitative increase in labor force should be accompanied by qualitative increase in labor force as well. Were you able to get the line? The quantitative increase in labor force, that is the number increase in labor force, should be accompanied by qualitative increase in labor force as well. What do you mean by quality? You want to look at the present scenario. In India, we have, next to China, we have the largest number of unemployment in the country. You know why this is happening? There has been a large number of unemployment in the country. So the number of labor force is there, but quality is not there. And therefore, how do we bring quality increase in labor force? You want to look at the Nagaland situation as well. As per the latest report, we have, more than 75,000 educated unemployed in Nagaland itself. Why are these things happening even in Nagaland? Why? Because the kind of educational system that we normally have, the qualifications that we normally have, those are not needed by, most of those are not needed by the market, the demand in the job market. So in order to bring qualitative increase in labor force, there has to be a change in the quality of the labor force as well. So to bring quality increase in labor force, we need to set up large number of vocational training institutes. We also need to set up more engineering colleges. We also need to set up more, medical colleges. We also need to set up more government polytechnic colleges or institutes, because these are some institutes which trains the individuals, which trains the students, and after finishing their studies, even if they don't go for government job also, they become self-employed, and therefore that will automatically lead to their contribution in the economy, and therefore economic growth will take place. So when we discuss about the first point, growth of labor force, this should be accompanied by quality labor force, that you have to remember. Second one is capital formation. Capital formation simply means investment. Obviously, when there is investment, there will be employment generation, and when there is employment generation, there will be increase in income. And when income increases, demand will increase. And when demand increases, obviously, the economic growth of the country will rise. But unfortunately, in India, investment has not been as much as it is done in advanced countries. Investment has not been as much as it is done in neighboring countries. In Nagaland itself also, investment has been very low. That's why Nagaland's economy is called dependent economy. We want to be an independent economy, we should increase investment. That's the second point. And the third point is technological progress. There are people who does continuous research and innovation. There are people who don't even sleep to get to come up with new inventions. There was a time when we used to see a computer, when computer was first introduced in Nagaland. We used to be surprised. It was large. It was, it was a little heavy. We thought that this will stay like that forever. But with time, people have now come up with portable computers as well. Today we have laptops. The computers that we normally use today, those are very light, and it has very large features as well. It has large storage capacities. Those are called technological progress. When people have already started using a printer and a computer to prepare question papers for the students, you still don't want to use a typewriter, because it takes a lot of time. When people have started using electric engine to run their trains, when people have started using diesel engines to run their trains, you still don't want to stock up in, steam engines. So when there is technological progress, there will always be an increase in the growth rate of the country. So that's the first point. How to promote economic growth? There are three sources. Number one, growth of labor force. Number two, capital formation. And number three, technological progress. Then we have the second point, how to keep inflation under check. So in the first place, what is inflation? Inflation simply means continuous rise in price of essential commodities. Inflation, it is a necessity for business, because from the business point of view, when there is rise in price, it's always a profit. When there is rise in price, it's always an encouragement. But from the consumer's point of view, when there is too much rise in price, it affects their demand. And therefore, keeping inflation under check is also one of the necessity of government's intervention. Government should intervene in order to keep inflation under check. I'm telling you, inflation, if it's moderate, it's okay. Because consumers like you and I, if the rise in price is minimal, then we do not mind paying a little higher price. But if the prices keeps rising, and time will come when even if we want the commodity, we are not able to get it because our income is less. So inflation beyond a limit, it harms not only the buyers, but in the long run, it harms the production units as well. Why? Because when there is inflation, slowly and gradually, it affects all the sectors in the economy. Slowly and gradually, there will be increase in the cost of production as well. Because those people who are employed, they want to demand wage rise, or they want to demand higher wages from their employers. And therefore, cost of production will also rise. And when there is when there is rise in cost of production, what happens? Productivity will be low. And when productivity is low, it means there will be low economic growth. And when there is low economic growth, our economy becomes even more dependent on other countries. And so keeping inflation under check is also a necessity. And the third point, macroeconomic problems I want to discuss with you is unemployment. What is unemployment? Is this a new thing that you are hearing it for the first time? Dear listeners, is this new? I hope not, because this has almost become a household word today. Everybody talks about unemployment. You want to define it for one mark. Unemployment, it simply means a situation where those physically built, able-bodied person willing to work at a prevailing wage rate, but is out of job because of unavailability of job in the market. That's the meaning of unemployment. I want to repeat it again. Unemployment is a situation where able-bodied person willing to work at a prevailing wage rate, but is idle, but is out of job because of unavailability of job in the market. So unemployment, it affects the economy in many ways, but we want to emphasize on two factors, two effects which takes place because of unemployment. So number one is those people who are unemployed, they are not contributing anything to the economy. Unemployed people's contribution to economy is almost zero. And the number of years, the number of labor that you lose as an unemployed person is never recoverable in the future. Suppose you have been searching for a job for maybe 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, and then in the 5th year you were able to get a job. But the number of years that you have lost when you remain as unemployed for the last 2-3 years, these very years are never recoverable in the future. We are never able to recover that precious years, and therefore that's the first effect of unemployment. Unemployed people, their contribution to economy is nil or almost zero. And then the second one is those people who are unemployed, they are automatically dependent on those people who are employed. And therefore, the employed people, they have to feed all these unemployed people. Now, what happens? Let's say a father is a breadwinner in the family. He is the only employed in the family, and he has to feed his wife. He has a large number of children who are already grown up, and everybody, all the members in the family, they are fed by their father's income. So what happens at the end of the day? No matter how much the father earns, his savings is always almost nil or zero. Likewise, in general also, those people who are unemployed, they have no option but to remain dependent on those people who are employed. And therefore, the employed people also, their saving becomes lesser and lesser. At the end of the day, when the saving is less, further production will also be less. And when the production is less, it will mean low economic growth. So to keep unemployment under check is also one of the basic macroeconomic problems. So these are the three main macroeconomic problems I have discussed with you. Number one is how to promote economic growth. Number two, how to keep inflation under check. And number three is unemployment. So I hope you are following your textbook as well. When you turn your textbook, the next topic that come across is the meaning of business cycle. In higher classes, this business cycle can also be termed as trade cycle. Sometimes teacher will use trade cycle, sometimes he'll use business cycle, but it's same. So what actually is this business cycle? Your textbook says business cycle means the expansion and contraction or the upward and downward movement of the GDP around its long-term growth trend. That is simply called business cycle. Business cycle simply means sometimes it expands, or sometimes it moves up, sometimes it comes down, or sometimes it contracts. It contracts along the growth trend. So what happens is, in order to understand this better, I want to quote J.M. Keynes. J.M. Keynes, he also says, a trade cycle is composed of periods of good trade, which is characterized by rising prices and low unemployment percentages, with periods of bad trade characterized by falling prices and high unemployment percentages. So when there is expansion in the economy, there will be rising prices. And obviously, from the business point of view, rising prices is always an encouragement. And when there is expansion, there will be low unemployment percentages as well. So that's, according to Keynes, is a good trade. Now, what is a bad trade, according to J.M. Keynes? According to J.M. Keynes, bad trade is a situation when there will be fall in price. So from the customer's point of view, when there is fall in price, it's always a welcome step, but slowly and gradually, when there is too much fall in price, it affects the economy as well, leading to large or high unemployment percentages. So for 1 mark, you should be able to define the meaning of business cycle. It simply means the expansion and contraction of GDP around its long-term growth trend. I hope that's easy to follow. The expansion and contraction that you have to remember. So this has been explained with the help of a diagram, but to save time, I'm not drawing the diagram on the board. The diagram is already in your textbook. So we will explain the 4 stages or the 4 phases of business cycle which is drawn in your textbook. The diagram which is drawn on your textbook, it has mentioned draw, expansion, peak, and contraction. But this draw can also be called depression. The general term that we normally say is depression. Depression or draw, and when there is expansion, it will mean recovery. So expansion means recovery. Then the third one is peak. This peak can also be called prosperity. And then lastly, contraction. This contraction will also be called recession. And this word recession, you open your TV and watch news, you will hear this very often. The world is now heading to a recession. What is recession? A stage where, output will fall, a stage where unemployment will rise, a stage where income will also fall. So this is actually happening even in India as well. Because of this pandemic, the supply of essential commodities has been badly affected. Thus, output is low. The income of the people has also been badly affected, that we all know, and eventually unemployment rises. So we want to start from the recession point. Recession, this is a stage or phase of a business cycle where I will mention 3 important factors. You please remember, where output, income, and employment will fall. Were you able to follow? So recession is one stage in a business cycle where output, income, and employment will fall. And it's happening today. In the present scenario, not only in India, the entire world is facing this problem. There is already a fall in output, there is already a fall in income, and already fall in employment as well. So recession is a stage where there will be fall in income, there will be fall in output, and employment as well. But this fall will not stop there. The fall will keep continuing. It keeps falling. It will keep falling till it reaches the next stage or next level called draw or depression. So depression is the stage where the fall of income, output, and employment will reach the lowest possible extent. Meaning the fall will keep taking place, but it does not go beyond depression. Depression is the last stage where the fall of income, output, and employment will take place. But we have a government, and government is there for the welfare of the people. Because of government's initiative, because of their monetary and fiscal policy, slowly and gradually, the economy will pick up itself. So after reaching depression or after reaching draw, slowly and gradually, the economy will recover itself. So recovery is another stage. That's the third stage or phase of a business cycle where slowly and gradually there will be rise in income. There will be rise in output. There will be rise in employment level as well. So this rise in output, this rise in income and employment will keep taking place. It keeps rising till it reaches the highest point, and the highest point is prosperity or peak. So in this stage, the economy will attain full employment. At this stage, the economy will have large production. At this stage, economy will have, people will be very rich. So these are the 4 stages of business cycle. These are the 4 phases of business cycle explained in your textbook. Now, before I conclude this business cycle, I want you to remember that even back in 1932, there was a Great Depression. And you know, the world was taken by surprise. So many problems took place. Slowly and gradually, the economy picked up itself. So from experience, it tells us that the business cycle, the duration, has been in between 2 years minimum and 12 years maximum. So in the present scenario, we are facing a recession, and I'm sure slowly and gradually we'll reach, depression as well. We do not know how much will be the duration, but as per the experience, it tells us that minimum is 2 years, maximum is 12 years. So before I conclude, I want to introduce another topic that's called good. In general, when you do something which needs appreciation, people tells you, okay, you're a good boy, you're a bad boy, so and so forth. But in economics, when we say good, it means a commodity. So any physical object, it could be man-made, it could be natural, which commands a price in the market, will be called a good. Did you follow me? Any physical object, it could be man-made, it could be natural, but that commands a price in the market will be called a good. So this good has 2 types. Number 1, free good and economic goods. Economic goods, it commands a price in the market. Free good, we get it for free. So some examples of economic goods are the textbook that you have, we buy. The paper that you have, we buy. The TV that you are watching now, we buy. The mobile that you are using it to watch this session, we buy. Those are called economic goods. But you know, when you look out, you are getting sunlight. We're getting it for free. When you go out, you get fresh air. Those are for free. When you go out, you get rain. That's for free. And those are called free goods. I want us to remember that when I say rain, it's the part of water that comes down from the sky, not the water that we normally buy. Because when we say water, in general, you know, we buy water. And therefore, in the first place, water was a free good, but water is not a free good anymore. That you have to remember, because we buy. Water becomes an economic good. So that's the meaning of good, which has 2 types, free good and economic good. You know, in this chapter, we have lots of goods mentioned in your textbook. We have consumption goods. In consumption goods, we have durable and non-durable consumption goods. Then we have capital goods. We have so many goods that needs to be explained, but you know, time factor. So the next time I see you, we will discuss, we might discuss the types of goods that I have already explained. But before I come and get you in the next session, you always remember to keep in touch with your textbook. Textbook, unlike other subjects, economics, if you have textbook, everything is there. And so you should always keep in touch with your textbook. Do not go out much. Wash your hands as much as possible. You know, you use hand sanitizers, and keep yourself safe from COVID-19. Thank you so much.